Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more relationship stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. And let's crack on with today's first story. Now today's first story comes from Trashit555, who says, my boyfriend feels like I am completely disregarding his feelings by moving to New York City. I feel like I'm trying to compromise and he isn't. Am I wrong? And it does come with updates as well. Throwaway and no ages because he's on Reddit. I'm a woman if that helps. My boyfriend and I have been together for over 3 years, currently long distance. We love each other deeply and for the most part we get along famously. For the past few years we have both worked very low paying jobs. I recently came into some money however, so I decided I would love to move to New York City. I've been there multiple times and it suits me. Lots of stuff to do, diverse, easy to get around, I don't have a car, etc. Here's the problem. My boyfriend grew up in the country. I don't mean small farms just outside of a city, I mean a truly rural area, with a ton of open space between every small town. Before I came into this money, we were talking about what we needed in a home when we eventually got the money to live together. And he would always bring up things like make rental prices skyrocket, a garage, a shed, a big yard, and he wants in an area where the houses aren't as close together as they are where I live now, which is a suburb. He went to a suburban college several hours away from his hometown and has travelled through Europe. But I think he still has the mindset that everything he had in his rural town, namely lots of space at a decent price and tons of quiet, is the only stuff worth having. I told my boyfriend that I wanted to use the money to move to New York City. I told him I was looking at apartments in comparatively quiet parts of the city, like Washington Heights, and I was looking for a studio type space where he could do all the crafty stuff he likes to do. I have artist friends who live in New York City and have studio spaces, and they've helped me locate a few viable options. My family is an 8-hour bus ride away from the city, and I now have money for us to get on a plane whenever we want, so we could leave the city anytime we wanted quiet. Unfortunately, my boyfriend is saying that this isn't enough. First he said he wouldn't want to travel to go to a studio. I told him he'd be able to get there in 20 minutes on the subway, but apparently he feels he should be able to roll out of bed and head out to his shop. Then he said that he wouldn't feel comfortable driving there. Fair point, but I told him he wouldn't need to drive in New York City because the infrastructure is so great. Nope, he wants to be able to drive and do it comfortably. And since he complains about traffic in my tiny suburb, that basically means he wants to drive in the country. Next, he said it's too noisy. Fair enough, I said. What if we move to a smaller city? Nope, he doesn't want to live in any city. Well, fine, I said. What if we live in this really nice suburb that's 20 minutes outside of the city with easy access to public transportation? Nope, the houses are too close together. Okay, what about a suburb that's an hour outside the city and I could get to the city within an hour by train? Nope, 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 nope. Last night he pointed out that his parents are down-home country folk and would never feel comfortable coming to the city to visit us. I said that's fine, we could go visit them at their home, which is what we do right now. Apparently that's selfish of me because he wants his parents to be able to come to his home and feel comfortable and invited. I feel like his parents are just stuck in their ways and totally opposed to anything outside of their norm. But that's a whole other kettle of fish. I've tried explaining to him that houses are closer together in most suburbs, but he just keeps repeating that he isn't comfortable with that. I've also asked him where he would like to live, and he always picks rural areas. I even told him that I could rent a smaller apartment in NYC and also purchase a little house in a different state so we could have both. And he nixed that because he doesn't want us to be separate anymore. I'm just not sure what to do. I feel like he has unreasonable expectations and is unwilling to compromise, but he tells me I'm being selfish for even considering moving to NYC because he never did like cities. I'm just not sure what to do. And we talk about compatibility a lot in these relationship stories, and I wonder if this is going to be the case in this one. I think OP is trying to compromise with what they're doing, given lots of options for different ways of living, but partner only has one way they want to live and they don't sound like they will compromise at all on that. And I'm not saying it's wrong for wanting to live the way that you want to live. Living in a rural place sounds absolutely wonderful, but it's not for everyone, just like living in a city. And if OP does decide to go down the rural route and live with them, will they resent it in the future? Myself, the only thing I can compare New York to, I don't think it's even comparable because New York is absolutely massive, but London. I absolutely love going to London once in a while because it's always busy, there's always stuff to do wherever you go. But a day or two of that and I'm overloaded of what's going on. And also cream crackered. And I'm someone that grew up in a town environment in basically the city centre of Oxford. But these days I like myself a bit of in between. But I think there has to be compromise here, otherwise I can't see how the relationship is going to progress without any resentment there. But we have some relevant comments from OP, then the updates, and we'll go from there. So first relevant comment says, I feel like I'm trying to get the happy medium, suburbs instead of city or country, quiet for him and close to transportation for me, etc. But he doesn't seem to want to compromise. Even before I got this money, I would tell him, you know, renting a house with a garage or a shed is way more expensive than renting an apartment. I don't know if we'd be able to afford that, and he would sulk because that's all he wanted. I feel like I'm trying to be realistic and fair, and he's just being stubborn, if that makes sense. Next comment said, when I tried pointing out that his hometown isn't a great fit for me because most people there don't like outsiders and you have to have a car to get anywhere, he got really angry with me. Maybe he sees his hometown through rose-colored glasses. It's a nice little town, but it's definitely not perfect. No place is. Next comment, maybe I should write down why living in the country makes me unhappy or doesn't work for me. I want to be with him and make him happy too, but I think we both have to give some wants up for this to work, and he's not willing. Next comment, I think part of the problem is that he grew up and went to school in roughly the same area, so until he spent a few weeks in Europe, he never experienced anything outside of his world. When he first came to visit my family in the suburbs, in another state I should mention, he made a big deal about how close the houses were, how much louder people were, how the towns all run together instead of having miles of separation between them, etc. And he acted like it was super weird. His parents, I could write a book about them, but they never leave their town for any reason, so they probably foster that. I think experienced more diversity at a young age and I have no problem leaving my hometown. We have lived together for 2-month spans, when he had breaks between work and we were totally fine then. We're usually very easy to get along with. We've compromised and talked a lot of things, different sexual desires and appetites, who will pay for what, whose parents we should visit and when, if we want children, how we should pay down our school loans, etc. I really do think the fact I now have the money to do anything has flipped some weird switch in his brain. Next comment says, we're both close to 30. I do think he's a little spoiled and immature sometimes. He's never had to worry about money. Family is rich, never lived outside of the state, and was cherished because he was the only son. I can usually talk to him when he acts a bit bratty though, and we work it out. Final comment says, he's shot down every other city I've mentioned, including, and the short list, Bend, Portland, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Iowa City, Jacksonville, San Francisco, Fargo, Bangor, Cincinnati, Savannah, even a city within a few hours of his home, he's shot down. I've been there and it feels more like a suburb to me. Every suburb he shoots down. It's almost like he wants his area and only his area. Now we have a couple of further updates on this post. So first one says, my original post wasn't really wildly popular or anything, but I just wanted to let everyone know what happened with my boyfriend. Warning, wall of text. We love that. I took some of your suggestions and talked to my boyfriend more. He admitted that he was in the wrong for acting like everything that wasn't like his hometown was weird. He's been trying to learn that things can be different without being weird. Then I told him that it hurt, that he just kept rejecting every option I came up with instead of coming up with some of his own ideas. He told me he'd been thinking about it and he was really ashamed about how he'd behaved. He admitted that he'd become very stubborn because of the money. We normally compromise very well, which is why him shooting everything down without suggesting any alternatives was so out of character and hurtful. He said he was afraid of moving out of his comfort zone. He's lived in a small town where everybody knows him for almost 30 years, and that's always been a safety net for him. He even got his current job because the people in charge knew him and liked him. He didn't even apply for or interview. Unlike me, he's never really moved away from home. He didn't want to tell me this because he was embarrassed. That was part of the reason why he ignored my ideas and didn't come up with his own. When I asked him why, he said, because you've worked for everything in your life, and I hate admitting that things are easier for me here because I'm a hometown guy. I hate that I'm scared of moving because people move all the time. He said he would kind of be glad to get away from his hometown so he could be proud of his own achievements, but it would still be scary surrounded by nothing but strangers. But in the end, he wants to move to create his own life. I asked him if staying in the country was a hard limit for him and something he wouldn't compromise on. He told me not really, he had just been embarrassed and was avoiding the discussion. He said he wouldn't do that in the future. I believe him because we talk everything else out. So I did what a few folks here suggested, and I asked him to go to NYC with me for a few days to make it more comfortable for him. I worked it out so we could stay with friends of mine. Trip started off really badly. He saw how people drive in NYC and freaked out. We used the subway to get my friend's place. The subway scared him. Friend 1 came out to get us and my boyfriend asked, are all apartments that close to the subway so you don't have to drive? Friend 1 shrugged, said he takes the subway or the bus just about everywhere, and mentioned that friend 2, his boyfriend, grew up in NYC and never even learned how to drive because he felt there was no point. I think my boyfriend is so used to everybody driving as soon as they legally can, and towns being very far apart, that he had to see it to believe it. My friends live in an older but really homey apartment in an up-and-coming part of the city. My boyfriend told me he hadn't thought that there was anything but the super modern $1 million apartments you see on TV, and again, he had to see it to believe it. I didn't think it could feel like a real home. We went for a walk around the area, and he said he liked all the different things to do and how easy it was to get around, but he didn't like the noise or the dirt. He said the parks were pretty, but more crowded than he was used to. He thought it was interesting that there were so many different food and shopping places, but because he doesn't get into a lot of that stuff, he wasn't wowed by it. I admitted that every time I visited, I'd blow my nose at the end of the day and a layer of grime would come out. That grossed him out a lot, but I wasn't going to lie about it. I decided that I would take the opportunity to do the things he loves and normally can't do. My friends and I took him to see a few musicals and he loved them. We went to the Met one day, and he was really impressed with it. He said he liked doing it, but wouldn't want to do it every day because there were so many people around you all the time. We checked out a few different parts of the city, and he realized that they're all kind of different. But he didn't really like the dirt or the noise level. I knew he wouldn't, so I wasn't shocked. He asked if I'd be okay not living in the actual city, and I told him that was fine, and reiterated a huge list of places I'd be fine living in. We also met a real estate agent in Yonkers for an afternoon. There was one brick house she showed us that my boyfriend liked a lot. He told me that he had been silly. He could absolutely live in a place like that. I asked him if he was sure because the neighbors were still pretty close, and he just shrugged and said, not everything can be like my childhood. At the airport we talked more, and he said that part of the reason he originally felt uncomfortable with the idea of moving was that his parents are racist and homophobic. And right now they live in a town where that's all white people. They say rude stuff all the time and it embarrasses him. A lot of my friends are gay or black, and he was afraid that they'd come to the city, make comments about people who live there and upset me. I know he isn't racist or homophobic, so whatever, let them yell all they want. After seeing it, he has decided he would really like to live in the suburbs near a city. He wants to move away from his family and the favoritism he gets in his town and start new. He said he wants a garage and a security system wherever we live, and that doesn't bother me at all. And we have one more update to this as well. And all I can picture in this story is Crocodile Dundee, where he goes to New York. I think it's New York he goes to. And I think he washes his hands in the bidet or something like that in like one of these real posh hotels or apartments. Absolutely love that. Anyway, that must be absolute like madness if you've grown up in a real rural town and absolutely out in the middle of nowhere, and you go to a big city like New York or London in my mind, and you see stuff all the time, like shows going on. There's always something to do somewhere, always something to see, and it's busy, hustle and bustle all around you. It must be overwhelming. But I'm so glad that, a compromise is happening thus far. Now boyfriend has seen it, and it's just his embarrassment to begin with that set this all off. And I hope this is going to continue as wholesome as it is, but we got another update. Let's get into it. This is not an entirely needed post, but I thought some of you would like a quick final update. After looking around New York, my boyfriend fell absolutely in love with a certain part of Brooklyn. It's very suburban feeling, safe, and is a quick walk to public transportation. I was actually surprised that he liked the area so much, and I asked him again and again if he was sure he wouldn't want something a little further away. He insisted that he loved the place and it felt right to him. Our friends helped us get a nice apartment for the time being, which, holy shit, real estate moves fast out here. And we're looking into buying a place soon. Tips for buying real estate in NYC are welcome. There are a few things we both dislike about the area, but that's normal, and they're pretty minor in the grand scheme of things. We've both found work and volunteer projects to keep us occupied. He's gotten close with a friend's boyfriend. They go to musicals together, and he's managed to meet fellow craftsmen in the area. He loves that he can have a relatively quiet place to live, but can also get to Manhattan in half an hour or less. He's also started to lose some weight because it's so much more walkable here than his hometown, which I loved him anyway, but he's thrilled about it, so yeah. I was worried he'd get lonely, but he's met so many new people already, and several of our friends have promised to visit us soon. He was worried that he'd stick out and everybody would realize he was a country bumpkin. But he started to realize that there are people of all shapes and sizes here, and they've seen everything there is to see, so they have zero fucks to give about how he looks. Most of all, he's happy that he's got a clean slate. Nobody knows who he is out here, so things aren't just being handed to him. He has to make his own friendships, he had to find his own job, etc. His parents are actually the only real problem we're facing right now, but they're throwing a tantrum about him leaving. I won't get into details, but I will say that while it's upsetting, my boyfriend and I both agree that we're not going to legitimize their shitty behavior. It's aggravating, but we'll survive. Thanks to everybody for all the wonderful insight and the fantastic real estate suggestions. We're hoping to build a new life as a couple out here, and r/relationships was so helpful. And there was one more relevant comment, which went on to say, I'm almost stunned by how happy he is to be here. I'm sure the excitement will die down once it all becomes routine, but for now, it's infectious. The other day he was like, honey, look, I'm going to ride my bike to the grocery store. I gotta say, that's pretty cute. And now, to me, this story has turned out so much better than I was expecting through their communication, in the way that they were talking about things, the way the boyfriend was talking about how he was embarrassed about everything, and that was the main sticking point for him. Girlfriend realizing, it can't be easy for boyfriend either, going from, out in the country to a big city life, so set up this trip, which was an amazing thing to do, showed him some of the sites he might like, and was honest, about basically spitting out dirt at the end of the day, which was obviously the best thing to do in the situation, open and honest conversation, because there was no point in lying about it, him moving there and then, him resenting you, which wouldn't have ended well either. And it was almost like fairy tale stuff in some ways, wasn't it? The start came off with OP came into some money, these two were in love, and they could just literally move anywhere they want to start their own lives. And it sounded like the boyfriend did need that in his life as well with his parents. He sounded like, and gets to, show his true character and what he's about and enjoy what he wants to enjoy without having to worry about anyone else from his past, really. I'm not saying that, he should abandon his whole rural past or anything like that, but it sounded like he needed that clean slate for himself. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys, and I'm going to ask you folks, has any of you gone from like a rural setting and then moved to a city, and how did you find it? Or the other way around, did you live in a city and move to a rural area? How did you find that? I think that's fascinating, especially if it's all a whole brand new thing to you as well. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Now, just a huge thank you for spending 20 to 30 minutes with me today and getting involved in the stories. Your love, support and time always means the absolute world to me, and I hope you know that. That's all I can say. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Much love.
Wake up, get up, stretch my legs, eat some breakfast, milk and eggs, brush my teeth up, wash my face, throw my clothes on, start my day. Wake up, I can smell the smoke from the bacon. Let's go. See the sun shining from the windows. Okay, I know that today.